Hi everyone, it's Don and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Well, the CDC's no sail order has finally lifted, but they now have this framework for conditional sailing with passengers and what's involved. And I think we should look at the very first and probably the biggest hurdle they have to overcome to start sailing again. So that's right. We finally have a framework that the CDC has given the cruise lines on what they have to do to begin a limited starting of their industry and start cruising again. And if you look through all the lists, there's 40 pages, but once you condense it down on what they have to do, they basically, the very first thing they have to do is do a simulated voyage on their cruise ship. Now, in order to do that, there are some conditions. First of all, they can't do a sailing if the ship isn't already in U.S. waters or hasn't been staying in U.S. waters reporting to the CDC through this time. They have to wait 28 days. They have to put in their application 28 days ahead before they can start the simulated voyage. That's the number one thing. So if they happen to be in U.S. waters nearby and they didn't leave for Europe or Asia or any other place, then those ships are the ones that'll be able to sail sooner. However, there's still a lot of conditional things involved to get the the framework started and do a conditional sailing. So the first thing is, in order to do a conditional sailing, the employees can't be forced onto the ship. We mentioned that before. It can't be part of your employment. So everybody from head office, today we're taking a cruise for 3 days. It's going to be a simulated test to see if anyone's going to catch the virus. No, you can't do that. That can't be a term. It has to be a volunteer, and that volunteer has to sign a waiver knowing that they're going on this ship to test the procedures. That kind of keeps the lawsuits out of possibility because they're volunteering to test the procedures out there. Unless there is a complete lack of a procedure, then you wouldn't be able to sue. And I mean by lack, I mean that they were supposed to do testing on the way in and they tested nobody. That's a complete lack of following a procedure. Then you would still have a case. But by volunteering, they're eliminating the blame factor and the future blame factor if the worst case scenario happens. Great. So we have our volunteers. They have to be 18 years of age or over. You have to have a medical clearance from your doctor as well, saying that you're okay to do that. I don't necessarily mean that, you can't have pre-existing conditions. It looks like now that as long as a doctor says you're healthy enough right now to travel anywhere, doesn't matter if it be on a cruise ship or any place else, if you're healthy enough to travel right now, unless there's some real guide saying that you are way, way more vulnerable than a normal person, or very, very susceptible, like you're in the middle of chemo or something like that, then you still may be able to go. But I think they're going to try and limit it to as healthy a people as possible, and they'll try and eliminate who they have to. The cruise lines are also not allowed to bring on a ton of extra employees for these tests. There's a minimum standard for doing a test with a certain amount of people on board. They're allowed to bring on a few extra, but they can't triple up their staff to make it look like they're doing everything super, super well, super good. Look how much cleaning we're doing everywhere. Everybody has 2 stewards for every room, and they can't do that. They have to follow the basic procedures that's set out by the guidelines of the CDC, who will be monitoring all of this situation. So now we have the framework for the simulated voyage. The simulated voyage now has to conduct certain procedures. It has to, show its hand hygiene. It has to show face coverings. It has to show social distancing. And it has to show basic sanitation of the ship as normal. So those things are going to be part of the cruises when passengers start getting on board. Face coverings are going to be part of it. Hygiene is going to be part of it. Your hand washing, you're going to be seeing those hand sanitizers and people in the hallways all over the place, up and down escalators, you name it, you're going to see it. As well as you have to do the different venues. You have to show dining venues, you have to show entertainment venues, you have to show embarkation, disembarkation, including at the terminal, and every single passenger and crew has to be tested before getting on the ship and getting off the ship once again, and crew members are required to be tested every week for these simulated voyages. And now they're saying right now that the simulated voyages cannot go longer than 7 days, but the CDC maintains the right to say, you know what, you better cut that one short, head back to port, or you know what, you better stay out to sea, we want to see what happens, and you're going to stay out there longer. So this is one of those reasons you need the volunteers, people who know that they may be interrupted. It's not like a pleasure cruise. It's kind of like a working cruise. You're a test subject. And so that's a big thing out there. So now that we're going there conducting the testing, we are checking the venues. Now the venues also have to be redesigned for entertainment, has to be redesigned for social distancing. How are you going to set up the theaters? How are you going to set up, Princess Live, their television broadcast area, if you're going to do that? The local bars and pubs, if you have live entertainment in there or shows in there, what are you going to do? The Oasis class cruise ships have that great big huge diving platform on the back. How are you going to arrange all that? Are you going to hold those? And then you also have to do shore excursions. You're going to have to show them the shore excursions and what your plans are, including private island shore excursions, if that's what you're planning to do and how you're going to implement them. And as you know, a lot of the private islands require you to tender back and forth. So they're not going to let you crowd on those tender boats like you used to. Like you used to get 200 people on some of these boats. And now they're going to make sure you're social distancing on board. If you're on a tender boat, you're probably going to have to wear a mask while you're on there, just like you would a bus. So there's a lot of things that they're going to be testing. And then after all that is done, they have to turn in a report, an actionable report afterwards to show any deficiencies that have been spotted or that they've noticed to the CDC. After that, the CDC will get that report, read it over, and have promised, now this is in writing as well, they promised that they will respond in a timely manner, which is huge because they took 3 months before to respond to the very first request for crew transfers when all this began to happen. So obviously the cruise lines don't want to wait 3 months after a simulated voyage with all their crews sitting on a cruise ship for 3 months before we say, okay, you can start taking passengers. So they promise that they're going to do that in a timely manner. However, they may tell that ship, you have to do another simulated voyage or a couple simulated voyages. And they didn't also say that you only have to do one. They say it may take a series of simulated voyages before that ship gets approval. And it does look like they are going to say all ships at the beginning. All ships you're planning to set sail have to go through this procedure. It's not going to be, okay, Princess Cruises, we're going to jump on the Royal Princess. If that ship passes, all your ships are good. It's not going to be that way. They're going to have to do every individual ship to get going. Now, once they get that simulated voyage, if the CDC determines that their procedures are done and they're good, then they can set sail. They'll set sail with a limited passenger manifest and a limited schedule, and the guidelines will be set forth at that point. Now, it still looks like it's going to be a maximum of 7 days. However, that can be determined, if everything goes well and they say they do 3 simulated voyages and everything looks really good on this ship, they may say you can go for 10 days. They may say, they can change that at any given time. The cruise line has the right to ask for that, and the CDC will consider it upon each individual request. So as you can see, there's a lot of complications here, and the CDC has a ton of control over it, but at least they seem to be starting to work a little bit with the cruise lines, and they're going to have to go with, all right, once this starts, eventually we're going to have, some ships sailing. The thing is going to be, how many ships do they want to sail at the same time. They've already said each cruise port will only be allowed in certain cruise ships, certain amount of cruise ships per day that they're going in there, and even per week, because if you sail out 50 ships out of Miami and there's an outbreak on 6 of them, they all have to come back to Miami to have hospital. That would overrun the system, and they don't want that. So there's going to be limits on board. So what does all this say? Well, all this says that anybody who has a cruise in December and even January and beginning of February, your cruise is very highly in doubt. I very expect this week we're going to start seeing the cruise lines cancel almost all December cruises, if not every single one of them, because they know they have to follow these guidelines and get the clearance. And even if they do a simulated voyage, that doesn't mean that they won't have to do another simulated voyage and then another simulated voyage. And, they can't keep guessing, right? They want to set up a schedule so they can set up, make sure the crew's all there and set up their entertainment to come on the ship and off the ship, what they have to do, go to the ports, make sure food's ready, make sure their embarkation hotels and all the stuff they need to do for evacuation if anything happens. All that has to be set up, and they can't do it on we're hoping that this time they pass their simulated voyage. They're going to have to set a date. So I'm pretty sure you're going to start to see 2020 gone, unfortunately. And then 2021 is going to be the guidelines. So you're going to start seeing applications very soon for simulated voyages near the end of this month, and then all through December for all the various cruise lines. And I have a feeling you're going to see them scheduling January as, okay, we're gunning for that date as our approval date. We're going to think all the hoops and jumps that we're supposed to do will all be over by then. And we think we can cruise on a regular schedule starting this date. So yeah, unfortunately, December really, really looks in doubt. I can't see it happening. I can't see it happening at all. Conducting, getting the crew all there, getting all the inspectors on there, getting the forms all filled out, getting the simulated voyage done, getting the CDC's approval after the simulated voyage. All that takes time, and it's not going to take time in 5 days. It's going to take time. So I'm thinking, here we go. Let's start off 2021 right off 2020, because it's been a horrible year for everybody. And let's just start things up fresh in 2021. Get those simulated voyages up and running and over with. Do the testing procedures. Make sure everything is good for everybody to be safe once they're on board the ships. And then you will see the cruise lines have a set schedule, and they won't have to go, that's canceled, this ship's canceled, but this one's going, this place is, all that garbage there. So that's the very big hurdle that the cruise lines have to do to start sailing again. The biggest hurdle, get through that simulated voyage. All that other safety and sanitation and all that, that's all technical stuff that they've been planning for a long time. But passing the simulated voyages might be something that they weren't quite ready for 100%. So we'll see what happens with that. Let me know in your comments down below. Do you think 2020 is written off? I pretty much do. I even think a lot of January and February could be out of the woods. I'm thinking March and April, you're going to see full schedules going ahead with what ships are going to be sailing, and you'll see that continue through the rest of the year, all things being equal. Well, I hope you appreciate this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Let's see more tips, more tricks, more travel vlogs from around the world. Hit that subscribe button. Till next time, have yourself a safe and a great vacation.